Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tea with G. I have my tea. I hope you have yours, or something. Maybe it's evening and it's a glass of wine, or I don't know, kombucha or something. Whatever it is you want to sip on. I so appreciate you all. I do. It is well, it's gratifying to be able to spend my life talking about the things that matter most to me, and that I am uh, committed to convincing everyone that they're important to them too. I actually made some this idea for talking about this subject of balance in spiritual life hit me last night as I was meditating, and I decided to make some notes on it early this morning. Maybe because my memory isn't as good as it used to be at one point, and which is actually just kind of more indication of what this subject is about. It's not easy to embrace your humanness when things are falling away more than they are coming. The words don't come as quickly. The quips aren't right at the edge of the tongue as before. Not remembering things, walking into a room and not knowing why you walked into the room. These little events, they're troubling, but they're really kind of the calling, and they're more indicative of the true spiritual path, the true middle way, and that merely having awakening, even a very deep and profound one that transforms you for the rest of your life, isn't a get out of jail free card. It's not a free pass. I always thought that it was going to be this from the moment I had that awakening at 19 years old, which did transform my entire life from then until now. I expected the rose-strewn path. I expected that was what was there from now on, and in fact, for a couple of years, I just enjoyed this constant flow. Everything was just working. I could not make any mistakes. And also from that time, just the insight and understanding and incisiveness were just constantly right on the tip of my tongue, as well as just the capacity to put it into words. And so I naively thought that that open door. Well, that was all there was to it, right? I'd arrived. Nothing more to concern myself with. And boy, did that take a nosedive in short order after that. But I was tenacious. I was convinced that the nosedive was simply a call to even double down on that idea that it all needed to be transcended and gone beyond. There was just this thing in me that refused to acknowledge humanness. I was convinced that the transcendence of it was the only way to go. And God, it took a long time and a lot of really painful lessons in life before I came to see that was exactly the opposite. The exact opposite was true, and it really started back in the 90s. So I mean, this is like 20 plus years after that first awakening, and came to fruition in the early 2000s with another incredible opening that I had with a Zen master. I want to talk specifically about the area of relationships. There's actually nothing more important to us human beings than relationships. I mean, everything's about a relationship, right? You can't say anything about yourself without having it in compare and contrast with something else. I mean, unless, if you're 5'7" like I am, and I'm with a bunch of people who aren't any higher than 5 feet, I'm tall. If I'm with if I'm standing in the middle of a bunch of basketball players, I'm a shrimp. So all of the qualities that we attribute ourselves are in relationship to others. And at the heart of our humanness, I mean, not just us, just every mammal on the planet has an absolute need for connection, for family, for love, for intimacy, for closeness. We have to have relationship. If we do not, we suffer and even die. There's a Native American saying that if all the animals on Earth were gone, man would die of loneliness. And I couldn't agree more. We simply cannot survive without it. And so ignoring that or thinking it doesn't matter because you've had an awakening is treacherous territory. It's like quoted in the show description here, Ram Dass, who's a very famous guy going back to the 60s, a spiritual teacher. He said, all the awakening and enlightenment and profound spiritual experience I have had over my life have not made a dent in my neuroses. What an admission. And I too, I kid about, I make fun, I make light of my lack of success in the area of personal relationships, intimate relationships, relationship with a woman. I make light of it, make some jokes. Many of you here have heard and had a smile, about, gee kind of area. But I look at it really closely and deeply and honestly. What I see is a dark spot in me that my awakening has not touched, that is so well cordoned off, so well defended that I can't get anywhere near it. What I now see of my attempt to transcend it all those years was in fact the result of the deep traumatic wound I received as a child, not getting any kind of love, not being taken care of, virtually either abandoned or oppressed almost out of existence. And so to compensate for that, I cut part of me off. And as a result, I've never really had a successful relationship. And anytime there was a relationship that had the potential to be successful, I found a way to sabotage it. Not consciously, of course. I just did. Just kind of disappeared, right? I mean, it's just kind of like couldn't near it. And so I can't, see it as a virtue, right? And it really underscores the whole point here. There's no free pass. This idea that I'm going to have the great revelation or there's nobody here, there's nothing to do, where it's all an illusion, is dangerous nonsense. It cuts us off from human nature. And what I've discovered over the last 20, 25 years is that the true spiritual path is a deep, profound embrace of human nature as it is. As it is, all of the ups and downs, all of the imperfections. That it is, as Ram Dass said, it hadn't made a dent on his neuroses, all of the awakening. And the Zen poet Rilke said, "Last year, foolish monk; this year, no change." To recognize that this is the path. We're not really supposed to succeed to some ideal perfection, some ideal perfect state. And as you spiritually mature and have awakenings, or just increase in virtue and increase in kindness and compassion, you're going to encounter these deep dark places of us of you that seem to be absolutely impenetrable. And no matter what you do, you can't get around it. I was back in the 90s, before a lot of this began to take root. I was going to therapy, psychotherapy, with a really good therapist in New York City, and his office was on the west side, right by Central Park, and I'd been there dozens of times. Right, we must have been getting close to something. I don't even remember what it was. One day, I was walking up the street at Central Park West, up Central Park West, to get to his office, and I walked right past his office and looked around. Oh, wait a minute, I passed it. I turned around and walked back. I passed it again. I turned around to walk back, and I passed it again. And I said, okay, God damn it. His address is, and I looked at all the things to get myself to get into that door. Something in just did not want to be discovered. And it was pretty, it was very clever on how it managed to keep itself concealed. How do we embrace human life? We cannot ignore human nature and grow spiritually. It's not possible. It affects our self-inquiry. It'll affect our meditation. It'll affect service to others. It'll affect our devotion. It doesn't matter what your practice is. If you're not willing to confront with the deep wounds and pains of your own humanness, you won't get anywhere. As if love is the most important thing in the world, then wouldn't it make sense that life would serve up all sorts of experiences that were going to force you to grow in love, as much as in wisdom? And how can you really separate the two? It's Christ who said, if you only love those who love you, what reward is that? Politicians do that, right? Speaking of which, this morning I had an opportunity to love the unlovable. I was in the gym, as I like to go early in the morning. And, in the gyms, they have TVs all over the place. And you can't help it. I try to avoid them, but you can't help but looking up there. And I looked up, and it was Face the Nation, a political show that's been on Sunday morning TV forever here in the U.S. And they're always interviewing a political guest. Well, today it was a high-ranking member of Congress. And I saw some of the things he was saying, because it was closed captioned around the bottom. And I just looked at him and go, you are just a liar. You're an unapologetic liar. And as a matter of fact, some of the policies he's pushing would literally cause suffering for millions of people in his own country. So what do I do with that? First, I let all the anger and outrage and disgust just kind of do their little dance in front of my consciousness. And then I thought, wow, what in the world do I do that? When Jesus was talking about loving those who don't love you, maybe even try to hurt you, man, he was really raising that bar, wasn't he? In that moment, I did not know how to do that. I could rationalize stuff. I have lots of spiritual, concepts that I could apply. But when it came right down to my heart, it was like, oh, wow, how do I embrace this humanness, this darkness? The purpose of our lives is not to attain some perfect state of perfection. It's not about that. We have to learn to love the imperfection, which is really the only kind of perfection there is. As it says in the Tao, the 10,000 joys and the 10,000. This is the perfection of love. And to me, this is the true spiritual path. And on that note, I will set aside my notes. I actually made notes and printed them out. Kind of have to do that when the memory isn't working as well as it used to. So thank you everyone for being here. You have no idea what it means to me. And I'm here to serve you. So whatever is on your heart, please share it. Let's see if we can't become more human together. Rosario in Madrid. Hello, my friend. There's Andy in Texas, Ava in Poland. There's Peter in Italy. I've got to get to Italy. Let's see. There's Robbie in Romania. There's Nazarene. So good to see you. Sunny Sunday in Ireland. Great to see you all from Dorte in Denmark. There's Corrine. Hello, Corrine. So wonderful. We've missed you. There's Daryl in Maryland. Nice. Good evening from sunny Sweden. Very good. So good to catch you live. Thank you, Karina. Oh, thank you. There's Plan in a windy Sweden. It's been several sunny days in a row here in Seattle, which means I try to get out a lot. Cold. It's still chilly. I get on my my bike, my e-bike, which goes pretty quick, and it gets chilly. Karina. Oh, there's David and Elaine. Hello, hello. Karina, going through some new layers of the awakening. So much joy and excitement. Not enough people talk about the journey after that first time. The self revealed itself. Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's kind of hard to market the crucifixion. When all the shit starts coming up and the honeymoon is over, which could have lasted a very long time, sometimes not. I've read 2 books now by Jack Kornfield lately. The After the Ecstasy, The Laundry, and the other is A Path with Heart. Both of which go into great depth of exactly that. And he did all sorts of interviews with all sorts of spiritual teachers, Zen masters, yogis, about after awakening. And the stories are just they're heart wrenching. People have suffered from all sorts of things, so all sorts of difficulties. Big names, right? Big names, as well as the more obvious difficulties of power and greed, misusing sex, and all sorts of other things that gurus can have, which is another reason to completely demystify this whole thing is so you don't put a guru on pedestal. Because the spiritual teacher has an enormous awakening and just flows with and natural wits and can and can take you to deeper levels. Doesn't mean they got their whole act together. Doesn't mean there aren't dark spots. I can verify for that. And it doesn't do any good to try to cover those up. This is why we need Sangha. This is why we need others. We need other people around us. The spiritual teacher lead a very isolated life and even begin to believe his own press. Very dangerous. Isolation, which is, well, it's a difficult thing for me. Right? As shown throughout my entire life, I got very disconnected when I was very young. So connection is difficult. It's scary. And isolation is very comfortable. Now, I have a naturally kind of reclusive personality anyway. I've never been much for that. But I also recognize the downside of it. My mother isolated herself, and it kept feeding her psychosis because there was nothing there for not to indicate to her that she was way, way off. She had completely touched with reality or common human experience. Matter of fact, she had completely alienated herself from everything. And so That was my example, the model I was to follow. Somebody asked Papa G, a fully enlightened became enlightened under the tutelage of Ramana Maharshi himself, right? I mean, lineage, right? And he was once asked, he would always say to be vigilant. He would tell, stay vigilant, keep your eyes open, keep watching. And somebody once asked him, well, do you need to be vigilant? And his response was, until my dying breath. How about that? It is so easy, especially after you've had a big awakening, and so much is clear, to kind of like want to leave the sleeping dogs lie, to misinterpret the signs that off base. It's so easy to do. I've done it more times than I count. To quote Ryokan again, last year, a foolish monk. This year, no change. It's the best attitude to have towards yourself. So I'm glad that meant something to you, Karina. So glad for your honesty about all this. It's so needed. Non-duality space can be so unhelpful sometimes. Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes, it can. There's Patricia. Hello, Patricia in Los Angeles. There's Serenable. Good to see you with green hearts. There's Mary. Hello, Mary. Karina, yes, thank you. I ended up clouded more by the illusion listening to There Is Nothing narrative. Made me feel more lost. There is truth in the nothingness, but it's not helpful when we are thick of believing to be the character. That is absolutely correct. And this is why it's the middle way. If you look at Buddhist sutras, the actual things that Buddha taught, half of it was pure non-duality. It is all a projection of mind. Mind doesn't exist. Nothing exists at all. And these are nothing but words, which he actually spoke in Lankavatara, the Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra, completely beyond, gone completely beyond. The other half he taught was how to live a whole, fulfilling, and more human life. Is this a contradiction? Well, in our diluted version of non-duality in the West, yeah, it seems to be a contradiction. How can it be both, right? Well, it is. That's the simple fact. How can it be? It's not the kind of thing your mind can grasp, at least not very easily, because it is both. It is love and wisdom, and this entire contrast in all of the streams are absolutely necessary if there's going to be any manifest world at all. But the manifest world is only an appearance. It isn't nothing, it is emptiness. Big difference. It is nothing inherent. It is nothing in and of itself. Just like I mentioned before in the opening that that I just forgot my train of thought. Too many. Yeah, there it goes again. Senior moment. Yeah, I mentioned something important. Anyway, it's emptiness. It's not nothingness. It is empty of all self-awareness. All right, I remember what it was. Your height, how tall you are, how thin you are, how smart or dumb you are, creative or dull, depends on who you're with. They're not inherent qualities. You have no inherent qualities whatsoever. Take you out of context, and you are what? Empty. That's emptiness. That's what it means. That's all it is. That all the qualities are a revelation of relationship. They only exist in relationship. And so for the fullness of the divine allness to be made manifest, we must have many. And this is why the one and the many. So the many is an appearance of the one, the essential being that is at the heart of all of it. Nothing has existence separate from that, but that doesn't make it nothing. It is nothing in and of itself. As that As the essence, it is everything. As the appearance, it is nothing. Dance between the two of those. Carl, hello everybody. There's Carl in Ireland. There's hello Fernando. Good to see you. Rena, I caught this for a reason. This is exact realization I'm currently having, and I feel free for the first time since I first saw our true nature. Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah, I had the, well, it wasn't that. I mean, I had a couple of years of feeling really just totally free, but I was in college. I was doing music. It was like there wasn't the pressure of life had not yet really uh, laid their heavy hand upon me. But then, oh boy, I felt anything but free. Just the full wrath of human existence came over me, and yeah, and thank God it did. Oh, thank God it did. Yeah, it was worth it. It was worth every minute of it. Lisa says I'm looking super Canadian today. I'm trying to be approved. I'm trying to become Canadian. Our much more gentle neighbors to the north of us. Ah, thank you, beloved GP. That sounds like Jonas. Love to you from everyone. Hello, Maria in England. Can you share more on something you said earlier? The dangers of projecting perfection on, well, anyone, but those whom we look up to and love. I would love, because there's no shortage of this, especially. We're not just talking about the guru types, right? Look at your average TV evangelist. They are so filled with hatred and greed and lust. It's just so evident, and yet the millions of people who watch them refuse to see that because, well, he's doing the word of God, therefore he must be perfect. And some of them I think are just downright grifters. They're just bullshitters. It's a lie from beginning to end. Um, if you look at the history of Billy Graham, it was a business, and it was about power and influence. But I think some of them are simply deluded. They believe their own press so much, and that somehow they represent the word of, that they mistake their own impulses, sinful impulses, for the word of God. So it's the gurus who miss you. Isn't it curious that the ones who need that tantric coaching to get to enlightenment by the guru have to be these pretty young girls? What a coincidence, I guess at a certain age you don't need the special treatment anymore. I mean, it is so fraught with danger. And again, this is why there needs to be a sangha where the guru is accountable, right? There are clear precepts as to what's appropriate and what isn't, and those lines shouldn't be crossed. This is the ethical part of spiritual life, which, if you get stuck in the absolute, you say, well, all of this is an illusion, so it doesn't matter what I do. And oh my God, that's insanity. It's a solipsism. It does horrible damage. So projecting an idealized human perfection onto a teacher will rob you of your own authority. First off, it will negatively influence your own confidence and self-esteem. It will gaslight you. It will begin to make you doubt and behavior that isn't right, but somehow you push it aside. So doing it to anybody, right? We do it to politicians, right? People who idolize a certain politician, like Donald Trump was idealized, but and obviously a highly unethical, immoral, dishonest man from the get-go. And yet to this day, people still think he was appointed by God to be the president of the United States. You can see how dangerous it actually is. And with a spiritual teacher that can become dictatorial. I've heard about plenty of those that make people afraid to leave. Get all their money from them. So our defense against that is to recognize that every human teacher is also going to be a bozo. They're going to have dark spots. Just assume it. They're going to have dark spots they don't see. And you don't have to reject them completely out of hand. It's great. It's an itemized list. You can take from that teacher whatever is of value there to get. Right? I hate it when I get too low on the screen. So let me raise myself up here a bit. I like good framing. And I guess I sunk down into the chair. Take what works. I had one teacher that I really liked him, and I learned a great deal from him. He's the first one to really introduce to me the idea within spiritual growth of training the nervous system for enlightenment. I had classes during that transition period of time when I was really beginning to grasp, and yet he was dictatorial. He was not a good teacher. He was not a nice guy. And he demanded an obedience that I felt was out of line with the trust he had earned to that point with me, and I left him. But I took from him what he did have to offer, which was a lot of cool stuff. I got Feldenkrais from him, a variety of things. But I also could see that this is out of whack. This is not right, and I'm not accepting it. So you can see what happens if you completely defer to somebody else, right? And especially here in the West, right? Because there's a much deeper tradition in places like India and China, and that go way further back in history than we do, where there was an entire cultural setup around it. It wouldn't happen as frequently. It was very much out there in the public eye, because the guru's ashram is around the town. I mean, it's not like it is here, but here in the West, that opportunity is far greater. So did that give you enough there, Lisa? Do not project perfection on anybody, because they aren't. Right? If there is somebody walking around who has no more dark spots, I've not met him, and I'm not sure I trust him. If I did, I'd still go, okay, maybe so, but I can't verify that personally. So there. I won't accept it. Let's see. Robin, hello, Robin in Galveston. Wow. Greetings to you too. Thanks for your sincerity on your own struggles, GP. Appreciate it. It's the kind of thing that, as a spiritual teacher, you wonder how much to reveal, right? It's basically a public. People can do stuff with it, but at the same point, it's like, look, dudes, do not put me on a pedestal. So the words flow very articulately out of my mouth. Yeah, I'm still a mess in certain areas of my life, right? That I have to look at, not as, well, okay, yeah, this is a dark spot, and doesn't matter how old I get, I have to face it. Period. It's that simple. This is the practice, right? This is spiritual practice. Right? It's not just in the mantras and the chants and the meditations. It's in this. It's in going to the dark places. It's walking into that cave to take the mask off of Darth Vader. Benji. Oh, it's David and Elaine. Such a fascinating, poignant, insightful opening. Gee, thank you. Oh, you're welcome, guys. Benji, e-bike. Is that so you don't need WD-40 for your joints, GP? Only playing. Love to be here again. Basically, because first off, I don't have quite the strength I used to. There are Seattle, if you don't know, is just covered in hills everywhere, right? So the e-bike allows me to get around. During the summer, I ride it everywhere. I don't take my car at all. I didn't even buy a car last summer. I just used the e-bike till it started getting down into the lower temperatures, and I have to break down and get myself a car. But it's nice to have it back. So, and I found on YouTube a tweak, because you're set by law to only go 20 miles an hour unassisted, right? You can get faster when you're pedaling. But I found a tweak on YouTube that I can get mine up to 26 miles an hour. So I routinely go over 30. I passed cars on the street. It's not an e-bike. It's a motorbike. It's an electric motorbike. Electric, and it's fun. It's really fun. Lisa, oops, my request came late to the party. You covered above already, and I covered it again. It's a subject that's worth coming back to over and over and over again. If you haven't noticed, it's just too important. It's too important. I can't emphasize it enough. Being one who got stuck in the absolute, trying to avoid it for many, I can personally testify the amount of suffering it causes. Excuse me. You're welcome, Karina. David and Elaine, if we don't embrace all aspects of our being and existence, then there must inherently be a disconnect and separation to a greater or lesser extent. Thanks for pointing out what we need to. We need to embrace the human. Yeah, it's a disconnect, right? If the truth is the truth, it has to be able to explain and harmonize everything. You can't just explain things away to make harmony out of what's left, what's already inherently harmonious. It's got to explain it all, even the real nasty stuff. And it does. Genuine non-duality explains the whole picture. It leaves absolutely nothing out, including human suffering, which is, of course, the big dilemma, isn't it? And you can't be in denial of human suffering, which is what the lopsided version of it tries to do. It tries to explain away human suffering as an illusion. At the root of it, there is a fundamental illusion, but that illusion creates a schism that puts us in denial of it rather than the acceptance of it. The illusion being that it exists independently from me. If it doesn't exist independently from me, if it does exist, then there's really nothing I can do. Suffering becomes a permanent condition. Hell then is the reality. But if it is not inherent in itself, that it doesn't have its own self, that it borrows its selfness from me, well, now if I can own up to and own that suffering, I can transform it. I can love it back into health and wholeness. I can find the harmony. And so the loss of the illusion that it exists separately from us opens the door to genuine freedom from suffering, which is the total embrace of humanness as it is. Robbie, some tips on doing hard things, being any nature. I know of tips like small chunk splitting and changing perspective. What if there's a visceral feeling of avoidance right at the start of it? Ah, yeah. Well, you know, the first noble truth is so powerful when you see the utility of it. Right? And what's the first noble truth that Buddha gave? There is suffering. Okay, so this is where it starts, right? There is suffering. There is a visceral feeling of avoidance right at the get-go. And I don't know what the hell to do with it. Boom. Doesn't it feel good just to say it out loud? To just, yeah, there it is. There is suffering. Now that's 100% ownership. Right? Not trying to get around it. And I say, well, suffering's an illusion. No, there is suffering. I am suffering right now. I am suffering. There's this visceral feeling of avoidance. It's something I don't want to have. It's hurting my life. It is creating suffering. Okay, there it is. Now, in the full owning of that, the process of finding its cause and therefore its end is possible. There's a thing about it has a beginning and it has an end. And it is perpetuated by us being ignorant of its cause. And so we keep causing it even though we don't and thus be robbed of the end of it. Forget the Four Noble Truths of suffering are also the Four Noble Truths of happiness. There is happiness. The difference is it doesn't cause. When the cause of suffering is discovered and the end of suffering realized, what remains is happiness. It's just the sweetness of being in the midst of all of the human turmoil and tumult. So start with that, just the raw admission of it. And then ask with all your heart, okay, I accept that you're here. I accept this feeling is here and I don't know what I can possibly do about it. Now I'm just going to put my whole heart into what is the cause of this? How do I put an end to suffering? Can you feel the power of that? I mean, that's the question that led Siddhartha out of his very posh life with everything he could possibly want in a relationship he was happily in love with his wife and his son. It pushed him out of that so he could go answer, how do we find the cure for suffering? And you're on the Buddha path if you ask the same question. And he went to all sorts of teachers and the like, and eventually he had to find it here. He had to find it in himself. He went through austerity, all sorts of things he put himself through. And eventually he just had to find it in himself. Where was that suffering actually coming from? And he did. And the answer is in you. The answer is inherent in you. The wisdom that can answer that question is the same wisdom that is motivating you to ask it. So start there. There is suffering. Okay. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to gloss it over. I'm not going to try to reframe it, paint a smiley face on it. There is suffering. What is the cause? Can I put an end to suffering? That's the Buddha path. The suffering does not come by denying or transcending your humanness. It is in the midst of it. It is separating out what that is the natural state of human existence, and that is a suppositional imposition on it, which is illusion. Thanks, Robbie. Does that help? Anybody? Jay. Hi, G and everyone. I had two questions that I got the answer from the Just Allow It course. So you're off the hook today, G. Beautiful. Beautiful. Lisa, it's emptiness, not nothingness. Beautiful. Yes, emptiness. It's empty of what? The only thing is, is this cup empty? No, it's got characteristics. It's full of tea or half full now. It's got my bambisha in it. It's got, well, if you can look at any living thing, and it's full of all sorts of stuff, molecules and things flying around. So how can you say? How can you say it's empty? It's empty of independent self-existence. That's what Buddha meant by no self. It does not have an inherent existence, just like, I'm tall, I'm not tall, I'm not short. High inherent existence. It is a momentary arising of one thing being compared to another. So nobody's smart, nobody's dumb, nobody's fat, nobody's skinny, nobody's beautiful, nobody's creative, nobody's dull. Not inherently. Right? So nothing has an inherent self. And the word the Buddha used, which is in Sanskrit, and it's actually the same word in Pali, is shunyata, which is translated to be, it's empty, but it's not nothing. It is not a thing that can ever be articulated. And yet when you look around, you see that which is not a thing made manifest in absolutely everything. Everything is the finger of God. Everything is the face of God. Everything is the face of that one indescribable being that is not a being, but beingness itself. Emptiness is so beautiful. So beautiful. Ava says, your voice sometimes not easy for me to hear. I've got the mic, so it's weird because this happens, and then when I go to the recording, it's actually so loud it breaks up. So I don't know. Is anybody else having a hard time hearing me? I mean, I normally do. I have the settings, audio settings. Make sure it's not doing anything to cancel anything. Let me turn off that and see if that makes any kind of difference. The echo cancellation and all that. But since I'm the only one talking, there's no sound in the room. It's needing to echo. So thank you, Ava. Who's looking after me? Hello, Karen Long. Good to see you. Fernando. One thing that I have always noticed is that once you get glimpses of awakening, this vulnerability of not being able to be 100% certain of anything anymore can also start to feel more rewarding, more threatening, which is a completely different way of experiencing a life. So I wanted to express gratitude for you helping to guide us there. Fernando, thank you. Thank you. Yes, getting that it's really an egoic protective mechanism and a big delusion to think that if I can be 100% certain, then I'll be safe. I mean, that's, and facing the fact that we can't ever possibly be 100% certain. And so it was Schopenhauer, the great philosopher Schopenhauer, was teaching a class that the Todd had, and somebody asked him, said, Professor, how do you know it's true? And he responded, he says, it's true enough. If we become to trust more in our resources, in our compassionate heart, in our cultivated wisdom, in our open-heartedness and our willingness to learn and our humility, there are natural resources that we begin to trust more than our certainty. Because what would be more freeing, to know what's going to happen and plan for it, or to feel so inner resourceful that we know no matter what, we're ready for it? Which one is more delicious? Would be more free. So I'm so glad you're touching that, Fernando. It's so beautiful to see that, and thank you for sharing that with me. And a heart from Karina. Thank you. Andy, these days I spend most of my time alone, and I feel more complete and comfortable than I ever have in the past. Are you suggesting I return to being uncomfortable? Am I lying to myself now? Oh, and you're 61. 10 years my junior. You're still a puppy. No, I'm not suggesting that at all. Remember, life is going to bring you what you need in the moment. Sometimes I make my story not say, okay, go diving into relationships, everybody. But instead, dive into yourself and find, we have to, it's all between the two. It's always periods of withdrawal. Go into a retreat, right? Be with people, um, socialize, network, and then also be alone. Be by, um, get to know yourself. Be comfortable with yourself. Go back out again. It's always this. It's never one or the other. And so while that sweetness and comfort is there, wonderful. Just be with it. Just the sweetness of it. And always remember that life's never going to leave you where you are until you are one with the infinite. And then there's no place left to go. And so things are going to come up. Opportunity for relationship may come up, right? What are you going to do with it? And it's not that you have to, right? You may be this way for the rest of this life, right? Then again, you may be a mother with 10 kids in the next. Who knows? We have no idea. It's just we always want to be making sure that we are truly being 100% honest and present with ourselves and our feelings, and that we're not using any kind of spiritual sleight of hand to suppress something that might be there. So there's always this willingness to both enjoy the solitude and all be open to anything that might be coming up. So it's like I've got to be willing to be with 1,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. Right? These days there's so much emphasis on processing stuff that people forget to just fucking be happy. When you're happy, just be happy for a while. We don't have to process everything. And not everything is this. We can get really curmudgeon about it, going on a witch hunt. Just yeah. There's moments it's just, oh man, this is just as good as it gets. But all moments change. Everything is impermanent. Everything is going to change. So you just enjoy this. Just thoroughly enjoy it. And use it as an opportunity to probe the depths of your own being. And by that, I don't just mean, let's dig up some more stuff. I mean, probe the depths of being. How deep can this completeness and comfort go? How far in is it? Pulling the dipstick out of the engine. I mean, how far down there? Where's the oil? Down in that rabbit hole can we go? So use it as an opportunity to deepen. And most importantly, use it as an opportunity to cultivate that loving awareness. Become Goddess Kanon, the goddess of wisdom and compassion. Thanks, Andy. Shirley, on board the lake from Salt Lake City, Utah. Blessings to you all. Gee, your opening paragraph is a gem. It's going up in my fridge for daily viewing. Hugs. Right. Fantastic. Thank you. Mary, people still believe Donald Trump is to save us 20. Yep, it's true. This is what happens when we project an imaginary perfection onto, and it doesn't matter what they do. Right? It doesn't matter. And Trump recognized that and flaunted it. It just doesn't matter. Although, he may be being the president of the United States from jail. That's highly likely. But, well, there you go. Oh, very strange. Very strange. Benji, hey GP, if somebody dies through a traumatic sudden incident, can residue energy cause strange happenings? Anybody but Biden, although the size of America, there's got to be more suitable candidates. Um, um, it's a strange thing. The effect we have on each other, right? Because that's what this is all about. So somebody dying in a sudden incident is going to ripple through everywhere. Right? Even on an undercurrent, the conflicts going on in the world, we all feel it, even though we may not be consciously aware of it. We all feel it. There's a certain level of anxiousness. There's a certain vibration going on in the entire world right now. If we just tune into it for a second, we can feel it. It's not all just personal anxiety. And so, can it cause strange happenings? Yeah, it could, but I mean, strange. What is strange? Just something other than what you would normally expect. But when our expectations are so narrow, a lot of things can qualify for strange. So there's all sorts of things going on that we're just really not conscious of. Becoming conscious of them is the spiritual path. That's the mission, to become conscious. Yeah. And to become conscious about everything. And that's not an easy process, nor does it leave you with a sense of, I think it was Nisargadatta who said that first insight into ourselves is not usually a pleasant experience. Sometimes we have to scrape through some muck, and also not project on anybody, right? Don't project, a villainy on somebody. Don't project heroism on somebody. Everybody, anybody who's in a powerful political position, has a lust for power. I mean, it's inevitable. It comes with the territory. Now, where does that come from? Well, it's going to come from the very same place that my traumas came from. The unloving parent, the difficult parent, the difficult circumstances, the parts of us that were not loved, but we found that we could function, with power, and so sought power, and others sought to not have any power. Some accumulate on money, some have no money, right? I mean, all the different ways in which we try to compensate. Our job is to get past the compensation to the essence of it. So you can regard anybody that in political life or social life or anywhere with those eyes of loving awareness, because it's not as though there's somebody out there who is personally flawed. Everyone is a product of environment. You can't separate the two. So there's no real sinner and no real saint. There's no evil person. There's no good person. Those lines run through all of us, and our spiritual practices is the consciousness that is willing to bring those to the surface and allow them to be healed. Lifestyle. There she is, Lisa. Adding notes for viewers. Lisa, she is the producer, after all. Projecting perfection on others can rob you of your authority, negatively influence your own confidence and self-esteem, gaslight you, cause you to doubt yourself, to take whatever value it is, and take whatever you can get and get out of there. Mary Sykes, is reality beyond all thoughts and beliefs? Well, it would have to be, wouldn't it? Because a thought can only operate in reality. And what can a thought be without another thought to compare it with? Any thought or belief, like any object, they're subtler objects, but they are objects. They have a definite perimeter, don't they? Right? And the car is different than the tree. This thought is different than that thought. This thought has a clear identity, a clear form and function, even though the form is much more subtle. Emotions are a form, even though it's much more subtle. Right? Not as a form like we would see an object with our eyes. And so because they are a form, they are immediately in relationship to everything outside of it, which means they can't be the whole of reality, can they? No thought can possibly encapsulate reality. We use the word infinite, right? To try to point to that which, what the hell is that? You can't picture it. You cannot form a thought about it. Boundless. Wherever you form the thought, it's beyond it already. Matter of fact, wherever the form arises, the infinite's already there to receive it. I mean, it's kind of strange, but even Einstein said without the content of the universe, there is no universe. You can't define a universe except by the stuff in it. And our universe is expanding, and guess what? It hasn't run into any walls. This all expands. It's not. We're not running out of room. How can you possibly see space without something in it? Take everything out of space, and what have you got? There's no thought. There's no belief you can hold about it that would be absolutely true. And so spiritual practice is taking this deeply profound insight that nothing has inherent existence. Everything is always borrowing its state of existence, everything else around it. And then bring that down into your everyday human life. This is the practice. This is what spirituality is all about. Take the absolute truth and live it in the relatively human world. And then you discover that the absolute truth is love. Love works in every dimension. It is all about love. And finding a love that has no opposite. A love that is free from objects. A love that loves the way the sun shines. The sun shines on the crooked politician as much as it shines on the saint. It makes no distinguishing at all. So, even the word love, we can talk about love, loving acts, loving feelings, loving thoughts, loving thoughts. But how do you conceive of love? It's beyond any of those. We recognize love in those. We say, oh, that's a loving act. We even recognize love. We say, that's not a loving act. We say, I love that. I love that piece of music. I love that. I love those shoes. I love this person. I don't love that person. Right? All of that, right, are forms, but they're not the reality of love, are they? How do you touch the reality of love, which would have, by definition, not have itself have a form? Because if it did, it would be limited to that form. This is the dance of emptiness and form, of substance and shadow, of unmanifest and manifest. The womb of all Buddhas and the Buddhas. So, oh, Mary, that was great. I love that. The thought can only operate in reality. You're buffering a lot? Am I? Let's see what happened. I lost a few things here. Robin, what if we choose not to change our circumstances that we will cause suffering, rather desire to transcend the aversion and embrace instead what deeply feels amiss out of duty and love for others? Well, yeah, yeah. Well, we have to really look carefully at how our choice, what's really making the choices. Is it our conditioning? Is it our patterns of behavior? Is it our fear of losing something? Is it just habitual way we've been? We don't know how to be any other way. You start again. I am suffering, and I don't really know why. How do I transcend this aversion? How do I make genuine transformative steps in my life that free me from suffering? How do I, when we talk about embracing the deep feelings, you are embracing the truth of suffering. If you put it that way, maybe it's not so hard to just, otherwise it's just a horrible feeling and I've got to somehow embrace it. No, you embrace the truth of it. Okay, this is what I am experiencing right now. I don't like this feeling. I don't want to be with this feeling. I'm experiencing that too. I'm both experiencing the misery of it and the aversion to it. Okay? Now that's a clear statement that I am suffering. There is suffering here in all its dimensions. And with my entire heart, I am looking for the middle way. I am looking for that perfect intersection between wisdom and compassion. And it'll come up, yes, well, you have a duty. And you go, oh, but I also have a duty to myself and to truth. And right now I'm out of integrity with the truth. But I'm afraid to act on that. Oh, there's another. You can see layer upon layer will begin to come up until finally there will be a clarity. And the deep prayer is this: I want to be true to the truth, true to be love, for the benefit of all beings, for the benefit of everyone involved. I mean, if I'm here and doing something out of duty, the person I'm doing the duty for is not getting the benefit of me in my heart. They're really not getting anything from me at all, except a bunch of behaviors, which they may be unconscious enough that that's okay for them, right? But it isn't okay for you anymore. So looking at the circumstances and the reality you can't do anything about them at a time forces you to go into the internal experience of it and sort the whole thing out. Eventually, as always, circumstances will change. When they change, we want them to transform into light and love and happiness. And so it becomes an opportunity to get into that aversion, to get into to embrace the truth of suffering in all of its dimensions and probe it down to its depths. And you'll find the fears, you'll find the selfishness, that you'll find the lack of compassion, you'll find the burden of responsibility. You'll also find the deep desire to find the right way, to love, to not hurt anybody, to cause no harm. And both of those begin to play together, the way becomes clear. And it may not be, Pollyannish. I mean, you may not be able to do it without hurting somebody. And it's painful when that happens, but if that is the most truthful way, then it is also the most loving way. But we have to really come to that. This is, the spiritual path is not a path for the faint of heart. This is very deep work. So, thank you for that, Robin. I really hope that helps. I'll pull the mic a little closer. People say I'm buffering, but I don't have any control over that. Ah, Andy says, your words mean so much to me. Sincere appreciation. You're welcome, Andy. You're very welcome. Mary has a question. I know a healer that truly believes that most deaths and illnesses are caused by demons and witchcraft and curses. And so for her, when you're a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail, right? So that's what she believes, and so she projects it on everything, and therefore she will see the evidence of it. Um, and oh my God, these malevolent forces out there, they're not out there, they're here. I believe that since he sees it that way, that is the only way he will see it. That way, even if it was not true. Is that how it works when one is looking at things from a certain perspective? Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly how it works. The beliefs then shape our perception, and whatever we experience now gets interpreted from that point of view. And anything that contradicts it is either diminished and just kind of thrown to the side, or doesn't get in at all. It's the nervous system doesn't even take the evidence in, doesn't even see it. It's as if it didn't exist at all. That's why these beliefs are so powerful, because they create that perception, and once that's created, you see it. That will be your life, and you can't understand for the life of you why everybody doesn't see this. And this is what you get. This is why the evangelicals have just become so virulent and nasty, because it just keeps getting that keep doubling down, keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse, till at this point it doesn't resemble Christianity at all. There's nothing left of the teachings of Christ in it. So yeah, you're going to see, oh, that's a devil, that's a demon, right? Thank you for your answer about reality. A friend posted something to the effect of positive thought and negative, where truth and negative thoughts were false. When I made the statement, the reality is beyond all thoughts, he remarked to me with a remark that I refused to say anything more about. Reality has no words. It is, yes. Reality it's a life. What is truth? Oh yeah, truth. There's, it's the allness of being, it's one, and it's perfect unity and everything. No, that's a thought. It's truth. You and I here, open hearts, seeking to know what is real. Truth is nothing unless it's lived. Nothing. It's meaningless. As Paul put it, it's like a tinkling cymbal or sounding brass. Useless. I either am the truth or there isn't any. The rest is just thought and conjecture. I must be it. That's it. And so what truth are you actually living? This is a self-scrutiny that is not for the faint of heart in spiritual practice. Robin, yes, very helpful. GP. Thank you, Robin. Oh, I got a hammer. I got a hammer and a laughing face. Yeah. When you're a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. It's true. True. Lisa, hi Jay Wave. I might be pushing it, but can you share to the Facebook Looking Class chat those two questions that just okay. The healer changed astronomical amounts of charges an astronomical amounts of money for his healings. Man after my own heart. Well, you can see that he's highly invested in it, right? And so if he can give these answers, the thing, everybody who comes into spirituality is hurting, right? Let's face it, right? People who come into spirituality are suffering. Now, the teacher, or in this case, the healer, can either see that and come down to meet them, that suffering, calm them, give them what they need, gently bring them into a place of self-confidence and self-reliance, or they can exploit it. Somebody who's really desperate wants an answer. Why is this happening? If they're inclined in that direction, so you tell them it's demons and and malevolent spirits, and what were the other things he said? Witchcraft, curses, and so people don't believe that, right? And there's a certain egoic pride in that. Oh, I'm not that. These are the evildoers, not me. And of course, witchcraft is nothing but nature religions that got characterized as being this evil, awful thing by the church in order to basically wipe them out and get rid of all of their influence. And the various kinds of witchcraft are really beautiful practices. They are practices, right? They are spiritual practices that are engaging with nature. Yeah, there's some that want to try to hurt other people, but that's not their essence, right? That's not where it really all came from. It's a celebration of nature. It's a working with nature. It's a love of nature. It's far more connected to the earth than the Abrahamic religions. And so um, yeah, so he charges an astronomical amount of money. What if people are willing to pay it because they want certainty? They want to be given answers, right? They don't want to be told, well, how much of this is your perspective? Let's take a look and find the demons, the witches, the curses in you. No, I don't want to do that. Bad people out there, good people here. I'm a good believer. Um, it's a much easier sale than the crucifixion, than actual looking at your own shit. It's a much easier sale to make. All right. Well, we're only an hour and 15 minutes in, but there appear to be no more questions. I will leave the lines open here. Make sure people are still hearing me. I've got no indication that I've gone offline. Um, things are still clicking. Are you all still here? Can you all still hear me? Just want to make sure that nothing has happened. I'm not seeing anybody. Nobody's responding. I just checked Telegram to see if Lisa told me. My producer told me that something has gone amiss. Sometimes the technology does go amiss. Yes, we can hear you. All right, so we're still here. Good. Roberto, my man, haven't seen you for a while. I have thought of you often. Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, yes, yes. Still here. Everybody's still here. All right, good. Then I know that maybe the questions have just dried up for today. I think I will make an excerpt of several bits of this satsang because this subject is so important. You just asked a question? Ah, I see it. I see it now there, Mary. Can you tell us your perspective on the crucifix? Of the crucifix itself, the little, oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. The crucifix itself, the little thing that people wear around their neck or make earrings out of? Or are you talking about the crucifixion, Mary? we, cruci. Awake, not woke. I'll get back to you, Mary. We all see ourselves as good in an evil world, but would you say all evil is within us? It was Alexander Solzhenitsyn who wrote in the Gulag Archipelago, just an incredible writer, an incredible book. He said, "Wouldn't it be nice if there were just evildoers, and we could just isolate them, boom, get them off by themselves, and wipe them out? Wouldn't it be wonderful?" But the truth is that good and evil runs through all of us, and who's willing to cut off a part of themselves? Yes, we see ourselves as good in an evil world, but that means we've taken a position that is culturally appropriate, culturally correct. So this is what good is, this is what evil is. I'm on this side, therefore I am good. I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Hindu, or whatever. That means I'm good, or I have this outlook on life or economics or anything of that sort. Um, and you can see that too is relative, isn't it? Right? What is good in one culture is evil in another. Right? What's a horrific act to us in one our culture is the way it needs to be in another culture. I find it utterly baffling that women still have to, you know, keep their heads covered, or in some cases their whole eyes, in black, you know, ground length dresses in black, in 100-degree temperature. I find it unconscionable, right? And yet, so I see that's a horrible thing. It's not. They don't, right? It's a virtue. It's something to do. So who's right and who's wrong on that? Well, it really depends on the criteria by which you're assessing it. But we can't grab some criteria, my culture, and impose it on somebody else. We can't do that. We have to find a common ground. And for me, that the only common ground I've ever been able to find is love. What is the most loving thing under the circumstances? Jack Cornfield tells a story about having a Buddhist monk from a very traditional monastery over in Asia came to a meditation retreat with him at Spirit Rock in California. It's California, more in central California, so it's hot, right? So it was like 100-degree temperatures. And in their meditation, people were in shorts and t-shirts. Now, this fellow, coming from his very traditional environment, had never seen a woman who was not clothed completely from head to toe. He had a real struggle because for him it was just, he didn't know what to do with it. And yet for us, it's like, well, no big deal. We don't think twice about it, right? And it's simply because what we're used to. We go to the beach. I mean, the poor guy, I hope he didn't go to the beach. Or even like, what's the beach right in San Francisco there, which is a nude beach. Poor guy. But it's purely it's purely culture. So how do we do that? We have to come we have to go beyond the pettiness of our cultural egos to get to find transcendent values. To me, the only transcendent value there is love. And with that, everything else will take care of itself. And just in any situation, you can ask yourself, is this, I have to make a decision as to which way to go. Which way is the most loving? Maybe it's not the ultimate love that I wish was here. Okay, this is what I got. These are my options. Which one's the most loving? Which one does the least harm? And recognize that good and evil are just perspective. We can go beyond it. As Rumi said, beyond the idea of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. It doesn't become an amoral, anything goes kind of thing. You just go beyond the relative imposition of it. To ask on a deeper level what really matters. And that helps us purge the evil from ourself, which is what? Which is selfishness, cruelty, greed, ignorance, arrogance, delusion, hatred, bigotry. Do we find any in ourselves? Like I said in the beginning, watching that politician lying through his teeth, knowing he was lying, knowing the damage he has done and wants to do more of. What do I do with what do I do with that? That is the calling of the spiritual path. The Roberta's been traveling. Glad to have you back. Okay, so that opens up the question, exactly what is evil that we all agree on. Well, we are as the maturity of human beings, we are far from that. Right now, our value system is profit and greed. Greed runs the world right now. And so that is the value system. That's the value system. It commodifies everything. It cheapens everything. It completely obscures the value of anything. It's the only value is market value. Turns human beings into consumers. That's our value. So let's first be clear about the value that we really are celebrating, and it's wealth, power, greed, lust. And where do I have any of that in me? That's where I have to start. Where else can I start? And to join with others who are on the same path, who want to find the love. You know, you have an example in Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela, released from Robben Island prison after 27 years. Innocent, political prisoner. He just got put in there because he was black and said black people should be free. 27 years. And he walked out there, I refuse to hate them. I refuse to hate them. If anybody had a right to do it, it was him. There was another woman, I can't remember her name, but she had been elected prime minister of Burma. And before she could take off, there was a military coup. They took over. It was a brutal dictatorship. They put her under house arrest. She couldn't leave her house, have any conversations, any contact with any human beings whatsoever. They put her in the jail, but she might as well have been. She couldn't go out, go shopping, anything. And they said, well, you can go. You've got relatives in this country that you can go, but if you go, we're not letting you back in. She says, I'm not going to leave my home, and I'm not going to hate you. No matter what you do, I will not hate you. What else is going to save the world other than that? And there are so many examples of that. So many examples of that. Be that. Be that truth. Be that love. Back to Mary. The crucifixion. In Irish mythology, I think it's Irish, there's actually some sort of thing, and it's about God who comes to earth to sacrifice himself to himself, and he does that by nailing himself to a tree. I don't, God, he's got 4 hands, I guess. I don't know how he does it. But sound familiar? Does it sound familiar? You see, we get, especially you had an evangelical upbringing, so it's the only important thing is the historical, literal truth of the Bible. It must be literally, historically true. Well, scholars do agree that Christ lived. The crucifixion, the resurrection, if he was crucified, it's because he was a political liability. He was a problem because he believed that the end was coming near soon, and that the Romans would be overthrown, and that he was going to become the king of this new world. And it appears as though, to the scholars, that is what he actually believed, and the fact that it didn't happen caused, this other stuff, these other stories and things to have to be made, because scholars really believed this was it. He was going to come, and this was God's kingdom. It had been promised. He was it, and this was what's going to happen. Now that's the scholarly view of it, right? don't look at it in terms of the scholarly view. Matter of fact, to me, it doesn't matter whether he existed at all. Somebody did, I know, because the way he spoke was so different that no person who was just practicing Orthodox Judaism at the time would have spoken like that. And he was in trouble with the Pharisees because his behaviors were always right on the line. He didn't complete break the law, but man, did he push it to the end. Um, and so, looking at that, you can see that there was a significant person who lived at that time, an enlightened being, um, expressing his awakening within the context of the very limited, ignorant, and Bronze Age Jewish religion. Himself was illiterate. He didn't read or write. Neither did his disciples. Um, and so he was giving the best expression he can to the deep insight, which to me I think he had. Now, as time goes on, it gets more and more elaborate. So the story of death and resurrection, crucifixion and ascension are not common. They're a frequent theme in literature. There's so many gods that have been killed and come back to life, brought back brought back from the dead. I mean, in the Buddhist Bodhidharma um, was I guess he was poisoned. He was laid in a tomb, and they came back. I think it was 3 days later, and he was gone. The only thing left, he left one shoe behind, and there's lots of paintings of this character with big bulging eyes, um, walking down a path with a stick over his shoulder with one shoe hanging on it, and he's shoeless. And people told that they had seen him and asked him, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going back to India," because that's where he came from. Then moves to China. The crucifixion represents this. When I have to face my own egoic tendencies, my own um, conditioning, my own selfishness, the lies and deceit, all the pain I have gained from being betrayed and hurt, and all the betrayal and hurt due out to others, that's the crucifixion. You are seeking the death of the egoic mind. You are surrendering to the will of God, not my will, but thine be done. And so it represents this transition point. The chakras are depicted, the seven chakras up and down the line. There's also, in the middle, around the center of it, is a coiled snake. The snake represents rebirth. It represents, because the snake sheds its skin, it's being reborn. There's a transition that has to happen for every human being and humanity as a whole. And that's the transition between transcending the purely instinctual, the unconscious, which is just the protective mechanism, the drive to live, the drive for pleasure in life and all of that, the sense of self, the egoic mind. Those are the first three chakras. To transcend into the spiritual life, which is a rebirth into spiritual life. And it happens at the center, and at the center in the spiritual life and the animal life is the heart. You have to maybe give me a second here. Let's see how much. 9%. Okay. You have to give me 1 second here because my computer is going to run out of steam. We still have a half hour if the questions keep coming. So, excuse me while I plug in, because I forgot to do. And Apple, in their wisdom, keeps making the battery have less and less charge as time goes on. They're so good at making sure you have to buy another one. All right. Things, audio. Okay, we're back. Very good. So it's, I mean, it's really so beautiful. It's really so beautiful when you look mythologically. Um, in the center between the human and the heart, and that's what the cross represents. Remember, the cross is a symbol that's been around years way, way longer than Jesus, and he talked about it even before the crucifixion, which is a horrible, torturous death to impose on somebody. But the cross, mythologically, is always represented as the according of the universe, past, the future, heaven and earth, and in the middle sits the human being. And the mythology of it, in the middle is the king, or the sovereign, or the queen, the sovereign of the nation, which is that which brings the flow and the balance to this whole wheel, the wheel that is spinning, right? Which are the chakras, right? Yeah, just these wheels of consciousness, these wheels of life. And so our personal crucifixion is going to follow that thematic model. And it's a thematic model, right? It's not a one and done kind of thing. It's not, okay, it's like over and over and over again, every time you find a new dark space, right? Within you that needs to be brought to the light. There'll be some element, egoic element, to die, and then some new essence be born to the world. This is what it really means. And the whole life of Christ as it eventually evolved is a metaphor from beginning to end. The actual reality of his experience, I can only deduce from the words that there was somebody there, and he appears to have been an enlightened being. And I and trying to fit. Think of the wisdom of a Buddha into that world, right? At that particular time in history, in Rome. And let's face it, Rome was not an intellectual powerhouse. They were all about money and conquering. They're like the United States. They didn't. It wasn't that important to them. Right? And they just found, the Jewish people to be problematic. And so in the midst of this, you have this guy trying to share a message of love, of of wisdom. So yeah, I could see that he would, not be particularly popular, and I could see how he, if they had faith in him that he was going to be the one that would deliver him, and then he ends up dead. What do you do with that? You either admit you were wrong, or little by little, you have a whole new thing coming along, interpretation of the scriptures, and you can see it through, Mark, which was the gospel, to I think it was Matthew was next, then Luke, then John. You can see the story getting more and more and more embellished. Um, but when you get right down to the root of it, it is a representation of this most primal thing. Joseph Campbell put it so beautifully. When he was talking about the crucifixion and all that, he said, there's two ways. There's two ways to come into the world, right? From heaven. You can fall into it, like the angel, right? And be grousing and grumbling the whole time. He says, or you can choose and embrace humanity as it is. In other words, my life sucks right now. I choose it. Yes, I'm choosing to be here. That's the beautiful message of the crucifix. He chose to do that. And did he do that? But in the using it as a metaphor, not my will but thine be done. He willingly walked into embracing human life, which I think is what I've been talking about this whole time. And if you look at all the mythology, you'll see it's all pointing to that. It is all pointing to this. Even the mythology around Buddha. So, Let's see if there's anything more. Yeah, there's still time, Fernando. I'll be back. Horizontal and the vertical meeting in the heart of the crucifixion. Was there not a meaning about the symbol? There not a meaning about the symbol. Well, that was the cross. Okay, covered it. The horizontal meaning in the center of the heart. Yes, it is heart. Where opening your heart to all of this. Where else is it going to happen? Intellectually, we can think about all this stuff, right? But how do you embrace it? I mean, whew, the heart. Yeah, you said it. It was you that I heard this from the crucifixion. Thank you for telling this again. I have a friend that is so stuck in the old way of its meaning. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. There are literally millions of people who are stuck in that. Thank you, Janice. Thank you very much. Let's go back to Fernando. If there's still time, give us some insight into your own daily practice. Is there specific things that you always do? Well, it changes over time. I always meditate, which means I sit quietly, right? I bring my attention inward, and I try to witness without comment. And, mind gets busy, depending if something's up or, there's a problem that I'm having, a challenge that I'm having to face. There'll be some times when the mind will get really chatty that I'll chant. I have several. Om Mani Padme Hum. If I want a short one, I do the Gayatri, which is a beautiful ancient chant from India that I will do. I will practice Ujjayi breaths with mouth open or mouth closed. And then after that, sometimes I will just write, automatic writing, like, what do they call it in the artist's way? Morning pages. I'll go to the gym in the morning, kind of a ritual, have my tea, go to the gym and come back and write and the like. And then in the evening, I do a similar thing. I will meditate in the evening, and in between, I will read some of the books I'm reading currently from Jack Kornfield. I really love his approach to Buddhism, and some other things as well, plus the writing. So in terms of a practice, it's. Lisa and I have created a new program called the Happy Human Starship, which is to help people make deeply transformational shifts in their life. As I realize it takes that kind of time. I mean, we have just regular contact with them, right? It's the kind of thing that we have to try more for it because it's really time consuming for both of us to be working with people so intimately and directly. And how do you actually make significant changes in your life? Well, you have to introduce little tiny things. A human life is a big ship and it does not turn on a dime. There's an enormous amount of resistance to letting anything go, but there's less resistance to letting something new in. So, say first thing in the morning, you wake up and you feel bad, right? Well, what would you do? Well, you could try to tap or something like that, or you could find something, right? Okay, when that happens, I will do this. 10 minutes of a chant or just deep conscious breath or something like that. Ram Dass, the fellow I quoted at the beginning, also said he, over his lifetime as an awakened being, he's become a connoisseur of neuroses. Just love that guy. Anyway, he said that because he spoke a lot, and he'd get on the way to speak someplace and he'd start getting really nervous, so he'd chant. He had a couple of chants that he would do. Right? If you can have just enough presence of mind to interject something in, right? It's a much better way than trying to, okay, I'm going to practice meditation an hour a day now. I guarantee you'll fail if you haven't been doing it already. And so the practices can be acts of kindness. It can be writing. It can be self-inquiry. It can be the practice itself isn't nearly as important as in the way in which you put a practice into your life. Now, first thing in the morning and last thing at night have traditionally always been the best place to for meditation because nothing started in the day yet. So there's this freshness. You could just come out of sleep. There, there's a gap there that's very very conducive to getting into meditation. Um, Late at night, it's a little more difficult because the days happen. There's an energy, but usually there's enough of a winding down that you can consciously choose to let that day go. Right? Maybe even one practice is to simply assess it. Where was I? Where was I successful? That is, where was I? Where did I remain conscious? Where was I actually keeping the commitments that I did? And then looking at where didn't I? Where did that all fall apart? And then let that whole thing go. Get glean something from your day and then let it go and go back into this place of preparing for sleep where I want to simply be present with myself. So there's all sorts of really creative ways in which we can make such a huge difference in our life. For me, that morning meditation has been a staple for decades, right? You know, even the times when I haven't felt like it. And when I've fallen off the wagon, as it were, boy, did I miss it? Did I miss it? So um, that is primarily for me. That's what it is. I use chanting. I use this meditation, the inquiry, um, but I know a gazillion different ways and different techniques and things because that's the skillful means you need to acquire in order to be a teacher because everybody has all different sorts of different needs at different times. So yeah, just be really. If you're trying to start a practice, start small. Don't try to throw your life into a sudden big change. It will not take. Big changes, big growth happens as an accumulation of small, tiny, almost imperceptible changes. So imperceptible that the nervous system is okay with little to no resistance. Very good. Let's see. Charlie Freak said crucifixion is actually crossing the fiction. Yeah, there's truth to that. Yeah. The Happy Human Starship, probably the only transformational program that I literally can say be forever. Well, that's why we designed it together. And we've worked on it for many months. I think going all the way back to like December before that, where we had the idea that this was this was a necessity that change without some kind of a regular interaction and a real shifting of mindset and practice was just almost impossible. So, all right. I see the questions have quieted down again. I've covered all sorts of things, I think. Um, Kind of a bit all over the place. But I hope that's all meaningful to you all, that it can really take it into your heart. It's just because I'm getting older that I just keep emphasizing heart, the heart, the heart, the heart. Um, because I started from the other direction, and most people do. First big awakening that people have is usually something in the mind, consciousness. You see things differently, perception, scales fall off your eyes. You see things completely different. What happened to me? And numerous times. The awakening part, on the other hand, oh, that's different. That understanding, you realize that the momentum and inertia and direction and habits of your life are not at all in harmony with the vision you've been seeing. And you can either say, "Oh, okay, well, I'm going to double down and make it, I'm going to practice even harder," or you can open your heart to the unloved, the wounded, the hurt, the terrified parts of yourself. And of course, in doing so, you automatically become a deeply compassionate human being for others, because you can't touch that pain in yourself without automatically becoming empathetic to the suffering of others. You just can't help it. It just happens. So, all right, everyone. Thank you. Seeing all the thank yous come across. Thank you, thank you. Thank you all. Oh, do you have anything to offer about the spirit located on the right side of the chest? Um, Not really. Um, Ramana Maharshi said that. My own experiences is I tend to feel it in the middle. Um, I know Nisargadatta said that he was asked about that. Was a fully enlightened master like Ramana, and he said, "Yeah, well, that's what he said," and you know. He said, it hasn't been my experience, but there it is. It's like no big deal, right? It doesn't really matter which side it is, or if it's up over here, looking over the shoulder. None of that's really important. Ramana said that he had a very good reason. It would have been a pedagogical reason. It'd been for the purposes of teaching. Because ultimately he would say that the heart is everywhere, that there's nothing but heart, and that the heart of the thing is simply your true being, which is everywhere. So, I've heard that it said it could be in your big toe. Well, I'll have to, next time I meditate on that, I will see if my heart center is in my big toe. There's stuff in my big toe. It's definitely there. There's an energy there for sure. All right, all my loves. Until next time, have a wonderful week.